Radio is a very interesting technology. We tend to take it for granted in our everyday lives. You may wake up with a radio alarm clock.
This is Weasel News.
Los Santos traffic is so bad.
Listen to your favorite radio station in the kitchen, or perhaps, if you're adventurous, discover new stations whilst on a road trip. But radio, as a form of broadcast and as a technology, is much more. Today, I present to you the Radio Iceberg. Before we start, let's explain the concept of an iceberg chart. An iceberg is a very, very large object. On the surface, it doesn't seem that large, but upon observing it underwater, we realize the grand scale of it all. An iceberg chart separates the iceberg in several chunks, each one representing a layer. The top layers are information most people are familiar with, but, as with many topics, surface knowledge is just the tip of the iceberg. The lower an entry is, the more obscure or scary it is. Now, this iceberg chart is by no means perfect. It follows a mixture of both obscure and scary at once, and arguably many entries are out of place. Additionally, I'm not going to go super in-depth on any of these entries. There are simply way too many entries for this to be doable in any reasonable amount of time, so I'll stick with simple overviews for each of them. Despite these shortcomings, I hope you enjoyed this iceberg analysis. Sit back, relax, and grab a snack. Throughout this video series, you may also hear about my personal experiences or my friends' experiences with certain entries, just to spice things up a bit. And with that out of the way, let's start. We're starting things off at Section 1, the sky, which is the place where most man-made radio waves travel. Entries here are mostly well known, and I'll often describe basic information. Even then, it is a good idea to refresh your memory before diving deeper into some progressively more obscure facts of radio. AM radio. The AM broadcast band, also known as a medium wave, encompasses the range of 530 to 1700 kHz in North America, with any set frequency able to divide by 10, 531 to 1701 kHz in Australia, with frequencies able to divide by 9, and 531 to 1602 kHz for the rest of the world, equally with a 9 kHz spacing. AM stands for amplitude modulation, a type of modulation where the carrier gets modulated to transmit the audio, in contrast to FM, or frequency modulation, where the frequency gets modulated. Medium wave AM broadcasts do offer advantages over FM radio. For one, full power AM stations offer a much better coverage area compared to a full power FM station, in part due to its much lower frequency. In addition, AM stations can reach thousands of kilometers on any given night, due to different atmospheric conditions allowing the signal to bounce back from the atmosphere back to the ground much farther away. More on this phenomenon later in the video. Of course, most AM stations have a worse audio fidelity than most FM stations. More on the outliers later in the video. FM radio. The FM broadcast band ranges between 88 to 108 MHz for most of the world. Exceptions include Japan, with a range of 76 to 95 MHz, and many ex-Soviet countries with 65.8 to 74 MHz, in addition to the usual 88 to 108 MHz. FM stands for frequency modulation as opposed to amplitude modulation for AM. FM generally has a higher audio fidelity than AM, which makes it usually preferable for music. Unlike AM, FM doesn't get affected as much when it comes to interference noise. In addition, FM stereo is widely used in the industry. The FM band is one of the most utilized band in radio broadcasting, alongside AM. Shortwave 3330. Clear as day. This is the time signal code. Sometimes it's hard to hear it.
Canada, temps universel coordonné. 3 heures. 1 minute.
Shortwave usually refers to the high frequency band, or HF for short, ranging from 3 to 30 MHz. Shortwave is located above medium wave AM in terms of frequency. When it comes to broadcasting, there are several bands allocated for this purpose. Shortwave broadcasting is usually quite international, as the signal can travel extremely far due to particular atmospheric conditions. Within this HF band, many amateur radio operators get to transmit and receive on various frequencies as well. More on ham radio in just a moment. Amateur radio operators, also known as ham radio. Amateur radio operators, or hams for short, are people who have an interest in radio technology and who are licensed by a relevant authority in their country to transmit within limits. Hams use radio transceivers to communicate with each other, whether it be around the block or around the world. Ham radio is a hobby, meaning that it cannot be suited for commercial purposes. However, in the context of emergencies, where telephone lines are down, ham radio is extremely useful and is sometimes the only communication method. Often, local ham clubs are the ones to help establish communications during a telecom outage. Ham radio is quite vast, with various types of audio modulation, frequency bands, data transmission, antenna types, satellite images, and more to choose from. With the right equipment, you may even get to bounce a signal off the moon. CB radio. CB, which stands for Citizens Band, is a two-way radio standard at around 27 MHz on AM. In the old days, a license was required, but due to very lax rules enforcement and the giant swarm of people who simply decided to ignore this rule, the license requirement has been dropped in the early 80s. Check, radio check. CB radio isn't available everywhere around the world, however, and in countries that do allow CBs, the channel frequency may differ from one place to another. To add confusion in the mix, some countries such as Australia has a thing known as UHF CB, which, as the name suggests, uses the UHF band instead of the regular HF band, though a version of HFCB does also exist there if I remember correctly. With 40 channels to choose from and various types of modulations from mostly AM but also upper and lower sideband and more recently FM, it really is some form of ham radio for the unlicensed. Since approximately the 70s, CB radio has extensively been used by motorists, especially truckers, as an easy way of communicating with each other. The convention places channel 19 as the trucker's channel and 9 as the emergency channel, though I wouldn't hold my breath trying to reach emergency services on channel 9 these days, as it is currently very crowded with non-emergency communications. RDS, Radio Data System. On the FM broadcast band, RDS is data being transmitted alongside the audio of a radio station for it to be displayed on the receiver. Most car radios since the 2000s have this feature, alongside certain home receivers such as this HX Data D808. Information may include the name of the station, the name of the radio show or song title with the artist's name, the type of programming such as news, talk, public, top 40, etc., and the time, amongst other data. Weather radio. A weather radio service provides weather information to the public through a special receiver. It is around 162 MHz on VHF in FM, spanning 7 channels. Typically, a text-to-speech software reads weather forecasts for your local regions. If a weather alert were to be issued, special weather radio hardware can turn on its own to alert upon receiving an alert code.
And yet with advanced warning, tragedy can be avoided. And All Hazards Radio gives you that warning 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
The weather radio service in Canada is operated by Environment and Climate Change Canada. In the United States, the NOAA takes care of it. In Mexico, a system known as Mexican Seismic Alert System provides crucial alerts for earthquakes. It is to be said that 162 MHz falls directly into the marine VHF band. Therefore, it is trivial to implement weather radio functionality to these transceivers. Marine forecast is also broadcast on weather radio regularly. These days, many HFCBs and UHF GMRS radios have some weather functions. More on GMRS later. Hello, this is me in editing and unscripted. So when I wrote the script for Weather Radio, it was not announced that Weather Radio Canada was going to shut down, but on March 16th, 2026, Weather Radio Canada unfortunately had to shut down. It's still a developing story because the transmitters are still transmitting, but they're transmitting a message on loop telling people that it is offline, go elsewhere to find weather information. I was devastated. I was quite devastated about this because I love Weather Radio Canada, and I was pretty devastated that they would shut it down. And I thought, why would you do this? You need backups during a severe weather event. You don't want to rely on the internet. You don't want to rely on cell phones. They can go offline pretty easily. You want some robust system. However, earlier today, I read this article, and I had to use the Internet Archive because this is how the article looks like right now. I can refresh the page, and it showed for like a second, and then it's, oh, sorry, we encountered. I don't know what this is all about. Anyways, this is on the Internet Archive. Now, this is an old article from 2020, but Environment Canada has been shutting down a few weather radio transmitters here and there throughout the years. And here's an article from 2020 and about how, some feds consider shutting down a transmitter in Cape Breton in Nova Scotia. So, there was a few information here that I actually did not know prior to today. I just read this today. So here we have Ken McDonald, from Executive Director of National Programs for the Meteorological Service of Canada. So McDonald claimed the following: radio service is unreliable. The programming is also affected by storms, McDonald said. There may be power to the transmitter, but we won't be getting information onto it because we rely on the internet to get it there. So it isn't a reliable source of information when those services go down. And, this guy says, Squire also said he wonders why Environment Canada has designed a radio broadcasting system that relies on the internet, on internet technology, with no backup. And I did not know this. Now, I don't know if this whole service that relies on internet technology. I don't know if this information is only applicable to the transmitter located in Cape Breton, or if it's a common thing across most, if not all, the transmitters across the country. I do not know this information, but this does not sound very good. I mean, remember, Weather Radio Canada started in 1976. I guarantee you they were not using internet technology in 1976. Now, I actually don't know what they used. I can guess maybe they used microwave links or something, maybe satellites. I probably not. I don't know what I'm saying because I don't know this information, but I guarantee you they were not using internet technologies. And when we're talking about very important radio infrastructure, you want backup systems. Don't be like this and have no backup. You want backup systems. It's very important to have backup systems, but apparently sometime in the last few decades someone decided to make it all IP based, which is a bit baffling because it's not reliable. And you know what is reliable? Your commercial AM/FM stations. Most commercial AM/FM stations have a bunch of backup systems. They want to stay on the air. They don't want to go off air. They need to stay on the air. And you know, just to give you an example, if you remember, not too long ago there was a gigantic power outage in Spain and Portugal, and everything was out. Obviously the power was out, but you know, the cell towers, internet, the whole thing, the telecommunications was completely blown out. Your cell phone completely useless. No internet, no Wi-Fi, no nothing. You know how people got information? All they used were regular AM/FM radios, and many radio stations remained on the air. Why? They had lots of backup systems, and they remained on the air, and that's how people got their information. They received radio broadcasts. Now, commercial AM/FM stations, they got all the backups and they can stay on the air during the worst scenarios. But for some reason, I don't know why, internet technology is the route Environment Canada chose. It really kind of blows my mind. So, you know, initially I was pretty disappointed. I was very disappointed that Environment Canada would do such a thing to shut down all radio transmitters. But then when I read this sentence, Environment Canada has designed a radio broadcasting system that relies on internet technology with no backup. When I read this phrase, I guess I'm not as disappointed anymore. If the system goes down the same time the internet goes down, I guess the system was not as robust. Now, it remains to be said that many transmitters transmit farther than cell coverage, so you know, you'd still reach people who wouldn't get any alerts when you're outside of cell coverage zones. People who live in very rural areas with no cellular connectivity at all, things like that. But man, still, this is very baffling. I did not know this, but here we are. I'm still disappointed that Environment Canada shut down Weather Radio Canada, but I guess the system wasn't reliable in the first place. But as it stands right now, I guess I'm not too disappointed anymore, knowing that this sentence is a thing. It's still important, even if it's crappy like this. I still think it has some value, because some people don't have a cell phone. Some people, believe it or not, some people live really far in the woods and have no internet. at all. And so if this is a way for them to get the weather, that's great. But, now that I know it's not that resilient, I just don't know what to say. Anyways, this is a giant tangent. Hopefully you understood everything I had to say. I was wondering what your opinion is, because I just learned this today. I thought weather radio was like so resilient, but apparently it's not, according to this sentence at least. I'm not too sure. So I was wondering what your opinions are now that you know this information. And with that said, let's get back into the video. Sirius XM. Sirius XM is a subscription-based satellite radio service primarily used in vehicles equipped with Sirius XM receivers in North America. It uses the S-band on 2.3 GHz. And that's pretty much it. It's not very interesting, that's all I have to say about it. Longwave. The Longwave broadcast band is usually between 143.5 to 283.5 kHz. The frequency should be divisible by 9, though several exceptions do exist. Currently, Longwave broadcasts are operated in Europe, North Africa, and Mongolia. There is no Longwave activity in the Americas, unfortunately. The advantages of Longwave is its signal propagation. Its waves travel much farther than medium waves in certain conditions, as the frequencies are even lower. Longwave makes heavy use of the ground wave signal propagation, where the radio signal hugs the surface of the Earth whilst propagating. Unfortunately, Longwave is declining due to the high costs of operations combined with the low amounts of listeners. Some remaining Longwave stations are MNB Radio 1 from Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia on 164 kHz, a frequency that isn't divisible by 9, by the way. Midi 1 from Nador, Morocco on 171 kHz. Polski Radio Program 1 from Solek Kujawski, Poland on 225 kHz. And Radio Athena Selator from Barsov, Romania on 153 kHz, amongst many others, one of which will appear later in the iceberg. Walkie-Talkies, more specifically, the GMRS standard. A GMRS radio, or General Mobile Radio Service, is a two-way transceiver which can be carried with you as a handheld device. GMRS is a standard used in North America in the 462 and 467 MHz range on UHF. Though it exists in both countries, the regulations are a bit different between the two. In Canada, for example, no license is required to operate, but the power limit is 2 watts maximum, whereas in the United States, the power limit is higher and antennas are detachable, but a license is required to use such a device. Equivalence exists around the world, such as PMR 446 in some European countries, with a maximum of 500 milliwatts at 446 MHz, license-free, or UHF-CB in Australia, with 5 watts maximum on 477 MHz.
Sur la voie 0 VHF. Avertissement Charlie, 3780, Saint-Laurent.
And we have reached the end of Section 1, the sky. Most of these entries were probably already known to you, and if you are a novice radio enthusiast, you probably already knew every detail. Well, strap in, because we are going to talk about slightly lesser known info in Section 2, the tip of the iceberg. Most of these entries may still seem familiar, though you may find a few pieces of new information. Pirate radio. A pirate radio is a station which is broadcasting illegally, typically due to not having a license. Early examples include radio transmitters located on ships and sea platforms on international waters, targeting the land in order to avoid troubles with local authorities as they are out of their jurisdiction. Land transmitters were and are still used today by radio pirates. Jammers. Radio jammers are transmitters whose goal is to overpower an existing broadcast in the goal of making it unlistenable. They were commonly used during the Cold War by many countries in the Eastern Bloc in order to prevent its citizens from tuning into the BBC and Radio Free Europe. A modern example of radio jamming occurs on the Korean Peninsula. Both the North and the South jams each other's broadcasts, including KCBS and KBS on the medium wave AM band. Jamming also occurs on the FM and shortwave band. HD radio. HD radio is a digital radio standard used mostly in North America, Mexico, and the Philippines. This standard is mostly used on the FM band, but is also available on the AM band, though with lower adoption. Typically, radio stations utilizing HD radio will simultaneously broadcast both analog FM and digital HD radio, allowing both old and new radio receivers to pick up the station. The analog FM signal is the fallback used for when the reception of the digital HD radio signal gets too weak, as the analog signal is more robust and can more reliably be received in a larger, wider area. Many radio stations which broadcast digitally with HD radio also offers subchannels, meaning they have additional audio streams transmitting different programming. For example, CBF-FM on 95.1 MHz in Montreal broadcasts its flagship station Ici Première on analog FM and HD subchannel 1, alongside Ici Musique on HD subchannel 2. DAB. DAB, or Digital Audio Broadcasting, is a digital radio standard popular in Europe and Australia, alongside various other countries around the world. It is not the same as HD radio, however. DAB broadcasts on a completely different band, as opposed to HD radio, which uses the same frequency as its analog counterpart on the FM band. DAB broadcasts are on band 3, ranging from 174 to 240 MHz, and possibly the L band on 1452 to 1492 MHz? I say possibly because I couldn't determine if the L band is still in use for DAB. Also, it is important to note that the L band is reserved for military use only within the United States, which in part explains why DAB never made its way in North America. A perk of DAB is, due to it being digital from A to Z, quite a large amount of radio stations can fit on the DAB band due to data compression. So just to give you an example, I picked Sydney, New South Wales, Australia, just to compare radio stations here for a moment. On the AM band, you have quite an interesting number of radio stations. Then you have the FM band, and well, you have a lot more radio stations. But then you have the DAB band, and look at all the stations that can fit on the DAB band, which is quite a lot more than the FM or the AM band. And this can be achieved due to data compression, because it's digital data which can be compressed. However, some of you may be very scared of this column, the bitrate column, and I was scared too when I saw this column. I was like, what? Are people listening to music at 72 kilobits per second? Like, what is going on here? This is horrible. But I read a little bit more into this, and supposedly DAB, or in this case it's actually DAB+, it's not the old DAB standard, which I'm going to be talking about DAB Plus in just a moment. But anyways, supposedly DAB Plus has a very efficient way of encoding audio, and it makes low bitrate audio sound fine. So if what I read is to be believed, this supposedly sounds perfectly fine. There is now a more modern version of DAB known as DAB Plus, which utilizes more efficient audio codecs. However, DAB+ is not backwards compatible with older DAB-only receivers. But like any technological evolution, DAB comes with some downsides, the most prominent of which is worse reception in distant areas. Unlike its analog counterparts such as AM and FM radio, where as you move away from the transmitter the signal degrades gradually, digital radios such as DAB and HD radio, as seen previously, suffer from the cliff effect, where you either have a perfect signal or nothing at all, which reduces the reception area. The higher frequency used by DAB also doesn't help. AM stereo. AM stereo is a method of modulating stereo audio on AM radio stations. There were many competing standards during the 80s, the most successful of which is known as Sequam. The audio quality was very impressive, and many say it sounded just as good as FM. I'd recommend you to listen to a few examples online, which I will link in the description.
HDT ラジオサウンドシュプール。ご趣味は?
Unfortunately, as impressive as it is, AM stereo did not succeed the same way FM stereo did. Where FM stereo is extremely common today, you would rarely hear about AM stereo radio stations. Several reasons explain its downfall. The existence of several standards did not help adoption, and the lack of stereo receivers on the market was equally detrimental. With the ever-increasing amount of talk stations on the AM band where stereophonic sound is not required, AM stereo slowly faded into obscurity despite the fact that musical AM stations are still plentiful and a regular monaural AM radio can perfectly tune into an AM stereo broadcast. Campus radio. A campus radio station is a station operated by an educational establishment, such as an university. Such a station can cover a variety of programming, such as a community radio to underground music unheard on commercial stations. A university radio station can be either full-power regional stations, allowing the local population to tune in, or only reserved for the campus population through closed-circuit or carrier current broadcasting. Border blasters. A border blaster is a radio station that has either part of or all of its targeted audience across an international border. A common example is Mexican stations targeting American listeners during a big chunk of the 20th century, especially on AM stations. Also, fun fact, did you know that Mexico allows AM stations to have a transmission power exceeding 50 kilowatts? If you want 100 or even 150 kilowatts, Mexico has got you covered. Current examples I have personally experienced include WBTZ The Buzz 99.9, broadcasting alternative rock from Plattsburgh, New York, reaching its listeners in the Champlain Valley, which includes parts of Vermont and New York, and the greater Montreal area on the other side.
Rock and alternative.
99.9
The Buzz.
Skywave. Skywave occurs when the radio signal propagation gets aided by the properties of the ionosphere, especially at night. Skywave contrasts ground wave and line of sight, where VHF, including the commercial FM band, and higher, requires a line of sight usually, unless if there's an exceptional weather phenomenon, and low frequencies, such as longwave broadcasts, benefit from ground wave, where the signal travels alongside the Earth's curvature. The skywave phenomenon reflects shortwave signals upon contact to the ionosphere, for it to travel back down farther to the surface of the Earth. The signal may even bounce back up to the atmosphere again, get reflected again, and the cycle continues. This is one of the reasons why shortwave signals are able to travel around the world under the right conditions. As for the medium wave AM band, the skywave phenomenon occurs at night after sunset. the absence of the sun changes the properties of the ionosphere, which allows it to reflect a lower frequency such as medium wave. 860. I think it's from Toronto. Radio-Canada, Toronto.
Voici les informations. À la veille du budget provincial, c'est l'heure des dernières pressions pour les réseaux de la santé.
Yep.
À Laval,
The medium wave AM band also benefits from ground wave, especially the lower frequencies. The resulting phenomenon is an AM station on the lower end of the dial benefiting from both ground wave and skywave. SDR. SDR stands for Software Defined Radio. Instead of using traditional radio hardware, an SDR uses computer software to demodulate a signal on a selected frequency. Such software can change the demodulation method on the fly, from AM, FM, stereo AM, sideband, digital, and much more. To get started, one usually has to own a computer and an SDR dongle with the appropriate antenna for the targeted frequencies. Cable radio. This term may mean many things, including the ominous North Korean wired radio, or the more tame closed-circuit campus radio. But within this context, we will rather be talking about radio stations made available through the same system as cable TV. If you have a cable TV subscription, chances are your TV provider also gives you access to a few radio stations through your cable box. This could be useful if you live far away from this transmitter of the certain station, or if the cable box is located deep underground, where radio reception is poor. AM expanded band. In the past, the AM medium wave band ended at 1600 kHz on the high end of the spectrum. Around the late 80s and early 90s, countries around the world started expanding the medium wave band up to 1700 kHz in the Americas and 1701 kHz elsewhere. Fun fact: you can somewhat approximate the age of a radio by looking at its AM dial. If it doesn't go higher than 1600 kHz, it likely was made before the expanded band came into play. So, apologies for the strange sound quality. I'm on a different computer, on a laptop, with a different sound equipment, because right now there's a power outage. There's been outages all day, and well, what am I going to do? Might as well keep recording on a laptop. So, here we go. Scanners. A scanner is a receiver which can tune to a wide variety of frequencies. It can usually jump around a set of user inputted frequencies until a transmission is heard. Scanners are typically used to listen to a non-broadcast transmission, such as walkie-talkies from workers, emergency services, train conductors, ham radio operators, and much more. Internet radio. An internet radio station is a radio station which its audio stream is available to listen via the internet. It can be an independent station run by an enthusiast like you and me, or it can be an audio stream of an already established radio station. Here's a set of pros and cons for the latter. Pros. You get to listen to a certain station even when you're outside its terrestrial broadcast range. So it's very handy if you're on vacation elsewhere. Another pro. You can listen on any internet-connected computer without the need of a radio tuner card or an SDR dongle. Now, time for the cons. So this con is a really big one, at least for me. The bitrate is often horrible. So, one of the better examples is Shom FM, with 128 kilobits per second audio in stereo, which is acceptable. It's okay. It's just okay. Other stations like CHMP, CKOI, CKBE, and many others, they have a low 96 kilobits per second. Guys, it's current year. Why are you on 96 kilobits per second? It's way too low, way too lossy.
It was probably 128 kilobit. That's what the standard was for a lot of stuff. Some of the lower quality stuff was 96, but yeah, you hear the cymbal ring and it's...
Lossy audio compression becomes quite audible at this bitrate. So, if you're within the broadcast range, you get a much better audio quality if you just tune to its analog FM broadcasts from the airwaves. You will have a much better audio experience, assuming your stereo system is high quality, of course. The next con is that there is often targeted ads injected in the audio stream. Now, I don't know what technology they use, but they somehow manage to inject one or two targeted ads within the audio stream. So what you hear on the online stream may be different from what is being broadcast on the airwaves and what is being heard by everyone else. And the last con, there is an approximate 30 seconds of delay on the online stream compared to the terrestrial broadcast. Now, it's not exactly the end of the world, but it's also not the place to synchronize a watch or to listen to a New Year countdown. You gotta do it on the airwaves. Marine VHF. Marine VHF is a voice communication system mainly used by ships on frequencies between 156 to 174 MHz on FM mode with a power level of 25 watts. And I put a star next to 25 watts. That's because I have to double check this information, but I can't. There's no internet. The internet's out. There's no power. There's nothing. So, often, the ship and the shore transceivers use different frequencies on a given channel, as opposed to other systems such as CB radio, where both parties are on the same frequency on any given channel. This allows the usage of full duplex, where both users can speak and hear at the same time, just like a telephone. Full duplex is only supported on some transceivers. Many are half duplex only, regardless on whether the channel uses two frequencies or not. Many VHF radios often come with a weather radio built in, as its 162 MHz broadcast frequency falls right in the marine VHF band, thus easy to implement. Weather radio broadcasts often contain marine forecasts as well. Radio spectrum. You are likely familiar with this spectrum. This is the electromagnetic spectrum you've almost certainly seen in science class at one point. It shows a separation between the different spectrum across the frequencies. At the very low end contains the radio spectrum. The radio spectrum can certainly be separated in multiple bands. According to the ITU, this spectrum starts at 3 kHz at the lowest end and 3 terahertz on the highest end. Now, this will get a bit confusing. The radio spectrum contains both radio waves and microwaves. Or does it? I'm getting confused the more I look into this. I initially thought that, indeed, the radio spectrum contained mainly radio waves with microwaves on the higher end of the spectrum. But the more I tried to find a specific number, the more lost I got. One source claimed that microwaves started at 1 GHz within the UHF band. Another exclaimed 3 GHz, the upper end of UHF and the start of SHF. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there is a clear consensus on the exact cutoff frequency between radio and microwaves, if there even is a hard cutoff at all. Some say it is more of a smoother transition between the two. Anyway, not to go too off topic, but here is the ITU radio spectrum. There are a bunch of abbreviations, but the most important ones, mainly those we've explored so far, are LF for low frequency, between 30 to 300 kHz, where Longwave resides. MF for medium wave, between 300 to 3000 kHz, where AM medium wave radio resides. HF for high frequency, where shortwave and CB radio resides between 3 to 30 MHz. VHF for very high frequencies between 30 to 300 MHz, where FM radio and certain TV stations reside. And of course, VHF Marine. And UHF for ultra high frequencies from 300 to 3000 MHz, where certain TV stations and cell phones reside. Of course, the examples I gave are only a small fraction of use cases of said frequencies. I only gave examples of more familiar applications. The reality of it is, there are so many devices in our day-to-day lives that use radio frequencies of all kinds to operate, most of which we take for granted. A more interesting chart would be a frequency allocation table. Every country has one. Here is the Canadian table of frequency allocations. As you can see, it specifically shows what each range of frequencies is for. Here's AM radio with its expanded band, and here's TV channel 5 and 6 plus the FM broadcast band in one block, here between 76 to 108 MHz. And this is the end of section 2, the tip of the iceberg. Unfortunately, here's where I'd have to split this iceberg into a multiple part series, as this video is getting a bit long. Stay tuned for part 2 of the Radio Iceberg, where we'll explore more layers of this iceberg. If this video seemed a bit boring to you due to you already possessing lots of radio knowledge, don't worry. Part 2 is where the more obscure topics really begin. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Hello, is this thing on? Hey everyone, it's me. First of all, I want to apologize for the low quality of this video. In fact, I believe I got a little burnt out while making this video, especially towards the middle. You may have noticed that the quality dropped a little bit towards the middle of the video. Like, towards the beginning, I tried to make everything look very professional, and, well, I guess towards the middle, I just slapped a bunch of images together and hoped for the best. And, well, yeah, so I'm sorry for the low quality of this video. Yeah, the video got a bit long, so the next video is going to be shorter. So I'm planning to make a part 2 of this iceberg series, and instead of covering 2 layers for part 2, I'm only going to be covering 1 layer. So right now, this video we covered the first layer, the sky, and the second layer, the tip of the iceberg. Well, the next layer is only going to be 1 layer. I believe it's surface waters. So yeah, there you go. So again, I apologize for the low quality of this video, and hopefully the sequel is going to be much better. And perhaps I'll also have other videos in between, because just in case if I don't know if I got bored or I lost interest or whatever, but hopefully I can get my energy back next time. So yeah, anyways, despite the low quality, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!